But you must get a court order and then go and search people's home, not 3 in the morning raid them. They've been raiding basically 60, 70 businessmen already. Many of them want to migrate now because they can't handle the harassment. These are the people who will create the jobs of the future. At the airport, they've resurrected an old law from 1976 that if you come out of Guyana with jewelry worth more than 1,500 Guyana dollars, that's $7 US, and you don't declare it, then they seize it and you'll be prosecuted. It's a return to the Burnhamite period. Things we thought would never come back in Guyana, they're busy on the agenda, and largely because the entire leadership of the new government, they come from that period. They're over 60, and there's nothing wrong with being over 60, but they seek their inspiration from the period that the 70s and the 80s, when the state was repressive. And so I can tell you about the budget and how there's the biggest budget ever, but no help to the productive sector. They've increased 140 taxes and fees in the last budget, mainly targeting poor people. But what is even more worrisome is that if you imagine you're pushing a dray cart in Guyana, and if you have to get a license, or you have a little vehicle and you're going around to sell. Some people do that to the villagers. The fee has moved from $12,000 to $65,000. But that's not the worst part of it. The worst part of it is that these people now, when they're going to renew their license, they have to demonstrate that they paid core income tax for the past 7 years. And if they have not, then they'd have to do that before they get their license renewed. This will affect about 50,000 small persons. I can go on and list all the anti-poor measures in the budget, but then I'll be taking up too much of your time. The point I'm trying to prove is that the economic philosophy of this government would not work. We can't keep wills open because we can't find 1.7 billion. But we just gave one company a $16 billion write-off, DDL. They took back the grant, the transportation grant from the kids, where every school child got a transportation grant that we introduced. They took that back. They couldn't fund it, but that was 1.5 billion or 1.6 billion too. But they gave the $16 billion waiver or write-off. So the priorities are all wrong. This government is squeezing people. They're going to go back to the repressive measures. And what we're very worried about is something, because those are economic issues, but it's the rights thing. The PPP made a lot of progress, but we still had many things to do, and we had many faults. We had many faults, we had many things to do, but the country changed immeasurably. The finances of the country, we took a bankrupt country and made it financially viable, even by their own numbers. When we got into office, we were using 153% of revenue to service debt. By the time we left, it was down to 4% of revenue. We had restored a bankrupt country to economic viability. And I think that was our biggest achievement. It's not the physical progress that people see and judge you by. But that had happened. But another very important progress we made that sometimes we don't recognize is giving people hope again. Saying to every Guyanese, in access to government services and the way the state operates, you're not going to be judged on the basis of your race, your religion, your gender, where you live. If you live in the interior or the coast or the rural area or the city, the state will be even-handed to all people. And that kept us in office for a very long time. But they have demonstrated in this short period that if you're black and you support the PPP, then you're subject, they've removed all of them. Indo-Guyanese are now decimated. We looked at the office. We had some information in the budget debates about who were removed from the office of the president since they took office. 98% were Indo-Guyanese. These are not just senior people, but cleaners, drivers, office assistants. There seems to be a process of ethnic cleansing. The Amerindians, the first week in office, they terminated 2,000 young Amerindians who were working, bringing services. I think it's punishment for the Amerindian people for overwhelmingly supporting the PPP. And so we've seen that. We've seen them try to get involved in the setting of dates for religious events and all of that. You know, I don't know, the PPP doesn't know which day Diwali should fall on. The PPP is a political party. But that's a matter for the Hindus to decide, not the government. We never got involved as a government, or the Muslims when there is Eid. But they're trying to divide people on the basis of religion and race again. And that's not sustainable. And so we're going to work very hard. So that hope that we had restored, people started walking around. We have a generation of Guyanese who walk around and felt free because they were not burdened by the troubles of the past. I've seen grown people cry growing up as a boy in the village when the soldiers came at 6 o'clock in the afternoon and they chased everyone out the polling stations at gunpoint. And then they took the ballot boxes and fetched them away. Many of the older people know what I'm talking about. Or they stuffed the ballot boxes right there at the polling station. I've seen fathers, and twice I saw my father cry in my life. At that time, when they took away the ballot papers, and when I was leaving the country. And because he considered himself strong. But they cried out of frustration because they did not have a say in their own country. They were second-class citizens. This piece of paper that they marked an X on for them didn't just mean a piece of paper. It meant freedom, liberation, choice, being recognized in your own country. And so that, it seems as though we have a lot of the things that we thought would never return to Ghana because we had moved a far way into the future. We live in a contemporary world and society. Those rights and the orientations are once again challenged. And so we would have to work very hard to make the changes. The party has to rebuild. We are rebuilding the party from bottom up. We have to go to every single home and make sure that people are aware of the situation. We have to work very hard in Parliament and other places to defend our people, to ensure that they are not discriminated against. Take, for example, the lights in Bath. The people got together and put up some street lights. They bought it themselves, 30 of them. They took them down saying GPL, the power company, can't afford that. But now in Linden, they're spending $1 million in putting up street lights there. That sort of thing you will see this government being open about. And so we'd have to struggle very, very hard. I know that many of you have relatives there and they would be telling you about what's going on, the sloth in the country, the crime rate. And it's not as though there wasn't crime under the PPP. I would be hypocritical to say that every government could handle all crime. But one thing was very clear about our approach to crime. People knew on whose side we stood. There was no ambiguity about on which side we stood, the perpetrators or people, the victims. With this government, the line is blurred. They've released, since the president got into office, over 70 prisoners. Pardon them. We have been trying through the The last bill I passed when I left was Freedom of Information Act. Through the Freedom of Information Act, to get who the people were and what crimes they committed. They will never give us that. We're trying in Parliament. Because we know that it's not just cell phone thieves, as the President said, but a lot of hardcore criminals. We know one, a rapist who did it again. One had a shootout with the police. He got killed. And so a lot of them were clients of the lawyers who were now with APNO and AFC. So they released them. They started negotiating. The prisoners took over Georgetown prison. They're playing cricket in the prison. Now, they open all the cells, they have knives walking around. 23 years, that never happened under the PP. And then they sent in a team, Ramjitan and the others, to negotiate with the prisoners. Once they did that, they blurred the line again. And then the President sent a signal. He said to the police, don't shoot to kill. The policemen have said to me, the senior ones, we're not going to get into trouble. Because the President doesn't want us. People have weapons. They're pointing them at us. What are we going to do? So it's better to avoid confrontation. The signals are blurred. And there's ambiguity. And that's why, and they have this new thing, this is our time now. So this has emboldened the criminals. Everywhere you go, it's our time. And so on the crime too. So all of these things taken together, I promise that I'm not going to speak very long because of today. And so we have to work very hard to change back. Maybe the loss is bad for the country, but it's not so bad for the party because it allows us to rebuild. And for people to compare, an entire generation to compare how they were in office, and whether they are believable. They violate all the promises. And so people now have a true perspective of the changes we've made, how much progress we made, and how quickly they're eroding that progress, and how they will discriminate against others. And so this is a task for everyone. I just ask that you help the people in the communities. When you come to Guyana, and Pandaji, I know you do a lot there. If there is any help that these people in the rice-growing areas and some of the sugar belt can get from people over here, you don't have to do it through the PPP, but they need a helping hand now in those communities because things are very, very difficult with them. I hope that over here too, people seek to get the information, balanced information, because we've suffered a lot from propaganda and one-sided information. We'll never get a positive story from the Kaichor News or the Stabrook News or the others. They'll always be biased. Now, you believe we're still in government. All the extreme cases of corruption that they had in the last year, they don't even report them. Georgetown, they spent $800 million on civil works without a single tender. If we had spent $10 million without a public tender, then everybody would, that would be front page news for the newspapers, but it's not in. So I urge you to subscribe. There is Citizen Report, Guyana Times, iNews, their party, the Mirror paper. You get our perspective on different things. Please inform yourselves so that, because one of the things we suffered from was bad news, and we were not good at propaganda. We are not good at PR. We thought by just working, people would see. Sometimes you work hard, and you still get the negatives because you don't focus. Public relations is very, very important. PR is, and so it's one of the things we've learned too. And so I hope you can do that and then talk to people back at home. And I hope that some of you, they managed to get a large number of people from Brooklyn and other places to go back home at the election. 400 people, and work with them. Campaign village by village. Help them with logistics, etc. Our people, we couldn't get a lot of them to go back home, you know. So I hope that some of you, maybe not just to go back home, if you can, some of them get registered, you can vote in Guyana, but also you can help morally and by ensuring that you talk to your relatives at home and support people here. But Panjaji, I really, really appreciate this opportunity to come here and spend some time and talk to you. As I said before, today is Mother's Day, and I don't want to keep people too long. But if there is any question, it's up to you. Anything you want to find out about, and Panditji permits, then I can be very specific in the answers rather than just talking generally and going on forever. Thank you very much.